The court recently unsealed the affidavit that was with the arrest warrant for Brian Kohberger as it relates to the Idaho student murders. In this video, we're going to take a look at what that affidavit said in terms of following the path that suspect vehicle 1, which is how it's identified in the affidavit, takes through Moscow. So we're going to look at when they first start talking about it, look at the travels, where it took place in Idaho, check out actually the overall map in terms of where Moscow is and then where Pullman, Washington is, so that we can get a better understanding of the layout and what happened. We're going to start by just bringing up just a general map of the U.S. I'm using OpenStreetMap to just show you this and to show you exactly where we are in the United States. I know it may have been a long time for some of us in terms of geography, but here's Idaho here, and as you can see, here's Washington State next to it. And so they're at the very northern tip of Washington State and Idaho. You can see that they're together. So I'm going to go ahead and put in Moscow, Idaho, and bring up a search for that so that we can see where that is. And as I was just talking about, you can see that property line, or state line. So there on the left, you have Pullman, that's in Washington State. Then you have the line here that I was just referencing, and then you have Moscow. And I should have gotten rid of all of these notes here. This is my first time actually using this particular software. And the notes are where people have added notes around these particular locations. So here's this one main line where you can get to and from Pullman and Moscow, Idaho. And then down here toward the bottom, there's a lower route that brings you into Pullman. But this is the most direct route right here. And so we're going to head on over to Moscow so that we can bring in exactly what we are going to be looking at here. Let me make sure I get my notes. This is the area that we're going to be looking at. And I'm going to sort of zoom in on that because I want to actually talk about what was in the affidavit and bring it up here on the map. So I'm going to close in on the area here. And this is the main area that we're going to be focusing on. So you can just get a look around here, the area that we're talking about. And you can see this further down on the southern part of Moscow is where it starts to get a little bit more rural. And this is the actual area where you have more going on. It's more like city, more like town. And we're going to close in on some of this. So this is initially this first part where they're talking about suspect vehicle 1 on page 5, and that it's in the 700 block of Indian Hills Drive. And it says this is where suspect vehicle 1 was at 3:26 a.m., this 700 block drive. And then it goes westbound on Steiner Avenue at Idaho State Highway in Moscow at 3:28. So approximately 2 minutes later, it looks like suspect vehicle 1 is at that intersection. And then it moves on. It doesn't really tell us how the vehicle moves down the street, but the next conversation that it's having in the affidavit is it's talking about 3 passes that were made by the King Road residents in this area. And you can see King Road, Queen Road, and then it talks about Legalista Drive. It says 3 passes by the King Road residents and then leave via Legalista Drive at 3:29 a.m. and ending at 4:20 a.m. So here's Legalista Drive here. So there were 3 passes, and then it says vehicle 1 entered area the 4th time at 4:04 a.m. driving eastbound on King Road, stopping and turning around in front of 500 Queen Road. So then you've got it here, in this area, stopping and turning around, and then apparently driving westbound on King Road again. So this is what the affidavit is laying out in terms of what was going on in this area at about this time. And it says, once in front of the residence, it appears to unsuccessfully park or turn around. And then it continues to the intersection of Queen Road and King Road, where it completes a 3-point turn and then drives eastbound onto Queen Road and then departs the area. And it's next seen traveling southbound on Walenta Drive. And then you have this movement here to exit the neighborhood via, I guess, Palouse River Drive and Conestoga Drive. So you see that here. Here's Conestoga Drive, and then it becomes Conestoga Street. And then you have the West Palouse River Drive. And this is what is mentioned in the affidavit, saying that that's where suspect vehicle 1 appeared to exit the neighborhood. And now I'm going to go out just a little bit so you can see that where that is. It's at the southern edge of Moscow. And this is what the affidavit actually says. Southern edge of Moscow and proceeds into Whitman County, Washington. So remember that state line that I was showing you before, Washington State and Idaho. So it's saying that the vehicle left this area and then headed back. And you can see here University of Idaho here also. But now you can see where that state line is that I was just referring to. And so you've got this lower part here where they say that the suspect vehicle was exiting the neighborhood. And then you can see this road here. So it's not clear whether or not the suspect vehicle came that route. But you can see how that route comes all the way back into Washington too. But here's the most direct route up here. And it does make you wonder if a person wouldn't take that route because that route might be more visible and might instead take this southern route. It's not entirely clear in this particular affidavit. I just laid out what the affidavit said in terms of what happened in Moscow. I haven't really gotten into what happened when the suspect vehicle was back on campus. But as you can see, when I back up away from this, you can see where the most direct route is. And then over here in Washington State, if we move back over here to Washington State, you can see where Washington State University is. And so now you have a really clear indication of how close Washington State University is to Moscow, Idaho, there on the right. So you really can see how close they are. And even in the affidavit, they mention that people go back and forth and that they really are only about 10 miles apart. And you can see that state dividing line there. And so, yeah, people generally would go back and forth. And these are pretty small towns. It's not like these are huge towns, but there you go.